Well, I'll just start by welcoming everybody and also thanking Dr. Pipe for agreeing to develop this special program for the University Senate in mindfulness, compassion, and resilience. It's something that we have discussed both within the Senate leadership and within the University Senate. We've all addressed this, the unending kind of collective anxiety. And it just seems that, the more tools and resources we have that can help us to disconnect when we need to and unwind and take all the necessary steps. And I'm hopeful that Dr. Pipe will be able to share some of the tools in her toolbox so that, we can be able to apply them in our own daily lives, professionally, but also apply them personally. I know a lot of us, are juggling a lot of different things, whether we're helping to take care of parents or we've got kids at home who are doing virtual remote learning and all the, the myriad of challenges that we are facing. But I'm so glad and so happy to see those of you who are able to join us this afternoon. And with that, I will introduce Dr. Terry Pipe. Dr. Terry Pipe, and you see her bio is in the chat. She is ASU's Chief Wellbeing Officer. And formerly, Dr. Pipe served as the Dean of the College of Nursing and Health Innovation at the downtown campus. She's also the founding director of ASU's Center for Mindfulness, Compassion, and Resilience. And before coming to ASU, Dr. Pipe served as the Director of Nursing Research and Innovation at the Mayo Clinic, Arizona, and was an associate professor of nursing at the Mayo Clinic's College of Medicine. And in 2014, she was selected as a Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Executive Nurse Fellow, which is a very high honor. Dr. Pipe is an expert on mindfulness, which is a skill set to increase the ability to experience being fully present, focused, and alive. Mindfulness has important implications for resilience within and beyond the healthcare and higher education sectors. Dr. Pipe is an expert on nursing leadership with a focus on interprofessionalism, bringing nurses together with physicians and other health professionals, business people, and policymakers. Dr. Pipe, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for this invitation. And I do want to just start with my gratitude for each of you. You play a very important leadership role in our university and in our society. So I want to really commend you for all the work that you do on a day-to-day basis and the difference that you make in our students' lives. It's phenomenal. And I don't think that it has ever been more phenomenal than in this past year. So thank you. Just thank you from top to bottom. I really appreciate it. The way that I would like to structure this presentation is I do have a PowerPoint and it will hit some high notes. And I've framed some questions, some self-reflection questions that I would like to pose to you. So if you have, as we're sort of getting started and I'm making some comments, if you have a journal or a notebook or just whatever you have to write on, of course you can write on your computer, but sometimes there's a little bit of don't quote me on this as a scientist, but a little bit of magic that occurs when you put pen to paper. So if you can just gather those supplies as we're getting started, that would be great. And this will be for your eyes only. This is, the questions are ones that I have found useful in my own life and in classroom and in business settings too. So you're welcome to use them if, in your life beyond today, if you would like to, certainly. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So as we do that, why don't we all take a deep breath? That's always a good place to start. And let's see. There we go. Do you see my presentation there? Nod your head. Do you see it?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. You'd think after a year of teaching remotely, I would be used to doing this like that, but sometimes it takes a minute. So we've already talked about me And so when I think about a good place to start with mindfulness, it's really about and the place where we are in history right now. It's about understanding what this sense of overwhelm and stress does to our bodies and our minds from a physiological standpoint and from a social standpoint. So we're going to talk about that very briefly, and then also talk about some, what mindfulness is, what it is not, and resources that you have available to you. And I do want to say that I'm not seeing mindfulness as the only tool in the toolbox, but it is one that I'm well familiar with as a leader and as a scientist. When I was at Mayo Clinic in Arizona, one of the things that I studied, that I did research about, was leadership and mindfulness, and how those two concepts and activities are connected and how they can really feed off of each other. And we'll talk about that briefly. So when I say mindfulness, it's really important to get us all on the same page. It used to be, when I started this work in about 2004, that very few people really understood what mindfulness was, so I would have to describe it. Now it's more a matter of just presenting a definition, a working definition that we can be in agreement about, because you've probably heard about mindfulness. You see it on magazine covers and for advertisements. I've seen everything imaginable marketed as a mindfulness vehicle. Even things like table linens and workout gear all have all have been borrowing the mindfulness word. So really important that we're on the same page. So when we talk about mindfulness at ASU, we do it in a very intentional and welcoming, inclusive way. And basically it's focused attention. It's a skill set. It for the purposes of how we practice it, it is not a religion. It is part of many different faith and wisdom traditions, and we'll get to that. One of the founders of, or the forerunners of bringing mindfulness to the US healthcare system and business sector was John Kabat-Zinn, and he's a very thoughtful and a deeply and well-rounded scholar who's written a lot. So if you're interested in delving into any of his publications, I would really encourage you to do so. He talks about mindfulness as an intentional and non-judgmental awareness of the present moment, which all sounds very easy and simple, but we'll practice it a little bit and you can see how you find it to be. So we have a growing evidence base about mindfulness, and I'll go over some of the top level findings in a little bit. And it's really important to notice that mindfulness can be activated in day-to-day life. You don't need to be wearing yoga pants and sitting on a mountaintop or a beach in order to practice it. We can all practice it day to day, whatever we're doing, however we're being, moment by moment. And in terms of leadership, one of the most important connections is that when we bring ourselves into the present moment repeatedly, it helps us as leaders remember who we are, what our values are, what gifts we have to bring to the world, and really our purpose. And so by attending to who we are and how we are regularly, we can make sure that we're headed in the right direction and that those that we lead are following an authentic and a well-grounded leader, us. So mindfulness has the ability to help us really reconnect with our own strengths, our blind spots, the places where we need help, and our purpose. What is it that we're doing here in the world? How is it that we're being here in the world? So a few things that mindfulness is not. So these are myths about mindfulness. First of all, it's not about zoning out. It's not about creating a clear space in your thinking. Certainly, as we practice, sort of the distracted, interrupted mind can sort of settle. But when we practice mindfulness, it is not about having a clean slate, in terms of our thinking. In fact, I often get asked, or when I ask people if they practice mindfulness, they often tell me that they've tried, but they've failed. And so I probe that a little bit and say, how did you fail? And pretty much everyone says, well, I tried and my mind wandered and I could not stop my thoughts. Well, that's not failing. That's just having an intact brain, which as a nurse, I'm really happy that that happens. It's a sign of health and well-being. So that's not failing at mindfulness at all. It just means that you're thinking and that you're human. So if that has happened to you, I hope that you'll give it another shot. It doesn't at all mean that you have not succeeded. So mindfulness is also more about more than just breathing. We often use the breath as an anchor for our attention and our awareness, but that's simply because breath is equitable. Breath is something that all of us as humans have while we're alive. We can take it with us. It doesn't cost anything. And also, breath is really well connected with our nervous system, which we'll talk about in a bit. But it's more, mindfulness is more than just take a deep breath. It's training the attention to focus on something. It might be our breath, but it might also be a conversation. It might also be something that we're trying to learn. Another skill, it might be the focus of your attention might be music or an art performance that you're enjoying, or just simply, what is it like to be alive in this moment? So we're training our awareness. We're training our awareness and our focus. As I mentioned, the way that we teach it at ASU, it is not a religion. Many, many different faith traditions have an aspect of mindfulness to them. And almost all cultures that I know of also have a focus on mindfulness, being still and being present. And so while we invent and innovate a lot here at ASU, we did not invent mindfulness. We actually really honor all of the people and generations that have brought mindfulness to us. And we also honor those who will take it into the future. So we're just here at this moment in history, enjoying our time of practicing and teaching mindfulness, knowing that we are undergirded by many, many in the past and hopefully many in the future. Mindfulness is also not becoming numb or unseeing to difficulties or challenges. Often when we see pictures on magazine covers of people practicing mindfulness, they have their eyes closed and they seem at a very peaceful place. And that can be the way that we practice. But often, at least it's in my view and in my experience, when we practice mindfulness, it actually touches into our understanding of that part of us, that essence of us that makes us human. And by virtue of doing that time and time again, we become a bit kinder and more accepting of ourselves. And then it can't help but bubble over into other people. So that when we learn to be aware and awake of our own humanity, we tend to be more empathetic and compassionate to those around us and even people that we may not know. And in that way, it connects us. When things happen that we should be raging about, it allows us to be full of rage. When things happen that we should be joyful about, it allows us to experience joy. So mindfulness is being awake and aware, and certainly motivated to action, not turning the other way and being devoid of action. So I think I'm going to, I'll advance my slide, but I want to take a minute and just stop sharing and see if any of you have questions. And you can just type the questions in the chat, or if you'd like, you can activate your microphones and just shout out your questions or comments.
Yeah, Terry, this is Hala. I just have a question. Are you talking because mindfulness has been in the news for a while, for a few years, and is it the one that is based on the Buddhist meditation that you are referring to? Because I heard that there was some backlash even in 2015 about really some people taking it to extremes and not understanding what it is. But are the roots that the mindfulness you're talking about back into the Buddhist culture?
Thank you so much for the question. So the way that, so certainly some arms of mindfulness, some practices of mindfulness have roots in Buddhism, and we do honor that. However, the way that we teach it at ASU is not based in one particular religious practice. It is, we often say that it does not require a religion or a religious background in order to practice in this way, and it should not get in the way of anyone's belief system. So whether you do have a belief system or not, it should be equal. It is the way that we teach it, equal access to everyone. Does that answer your question?
Sorry, I have two dogs next to me. I'm trying to just mute myself whenever I'm not saying anything. One of them is a puppy and he just yaps. It does answer my question. But was there, if I remember correctly, in the around, I think there was an article in New York Magazine, and there was one in, I forgot where it was, where they were talking about the backlash from people talking about mindfulness too much. Was there a resistance for this movement?
Absolutely. Yes, from many different directions. So yes, there is some backlash, and so the way that I approach criticism or skepticism or pushback, however you want to frame it, is I welcome it. I think it's important. It's part of the dialogue, and understanding where the reluctance or the disagreement comes in is really important. So there is backlash in terms of, the way that we teach it is we're not teaching a religion. In some mindfulness classrooms and workshops and entities, it will be from a Buddhist perspective. And certainly we use a lot of different teachings from many different belief systems, and also indigenous peoples. I mean, there's so much to learn from the world's populations. So we pull in from as many as possible at ASU, at our Center for Mindfulness, Compassion, and Resilience. But that's not to say that that's true of every mindfulness center across the country. That everybody does this a little bit differently. We decided, based on ASU's charter, to be as inclusive as possible and to really focus on making mindfulness equitable, not something that you had to be able to afford, or something that you had to buy, or had to come in through a certain door. So we've tried to make everything as open and clear and transparent as possible. So there is pushback from the religion perspective. There's also sometimes pushback in terms of the last things that I was offering there was, does mindfulness make us numb to what's going on in the world? Does it make us just want to numb out in a way and to not pay attention? And that could not be further from the truth in the way that we're teaching it and practicing it at ASU, is that it really helps us to tune into where do we want to spend our attention and energy, and go there, right? There's a lot to do in the world, and it's really important to offer our own gifts in certain ways. So religion, numbing down, and then the third place that I have experienced a lot of skepticism is in, of course, I come from healthcare, and a lot of physicians and nurses love the high stress environment of healthcare. And we find this in academia too, that a lot of people are drawn to the drive and the fast pace and, just the adrenaline, that's fun for many people. And so to come to audiences to say, here are ways to mitigate the stress of the environment. They don't want to mitigate the stress of the environment. They would prefer to just take it head on. And, there's that kind of badge of courage and badge of honor that, I survived this amazing environment and I'm stronger for it. So those are the areas where I'm most familiar with pushback or doubt, skepticism. And as I said, I really welcome it. In fact, I've often said that skepticism is my sister, and she walks with me every day. And I really appreciate that, because otherwise we don't know we don't know how to talk to people in a way that is fruitful if we don't understand where the disagreements may be coming. So I welcome it, and sometimes there's very valid points for it and things that we can learn going forward. Any
Thank
other
you very
questions?
much.
Oh, absolutely. And I have 2 dogs too, and I know I operate the mute button very often.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions before we move on? Comments? Okay, so I think I'll go back now. All right, so Viktor Frankl was a Holocaust survivor and wrote an incredible book. Many of you have probably read it, and if not, I would highly recommend it to you. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. And in that, he wrote, there's a lot more to his book than what I have on this slide, so much. He wrote from his perspective as a survivor about his understanding and his coming to learn about how his perspective kept him free, even though he was captive and faced brutal circumstances. And this is one paraphrased quote that helped me understand mindfulness very clearly. So I include it here. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So every time I read that or think of it, I just am so moved by the fact that if he could think that way, and he saw this as a source of his internal freedom, even though he was navigating these circumstances. And so it really helps me understand in any circumstance, no matter what the external world may have for me to, offer me, I can choose my response to some degree. And with practice, time and time again, as I become more familiar with that choice and that agency, I become more apt to act that way, to choose my way of communicating, my way of behaving, even my way of thinking and being in the world with a little bit more power and choice. So I found this just to be very helpful. And this is a figure that depicts it. And it's guided by this question of what choice do I want to make in this moment? What do I wish to take in? So the first line is, there's stress and the response. And often the response is very automatic. It happens habitually. And that can be behaviors, thoughts, ways that we communicate. When we're under stress, it's very, very normal for us to have a patterned response. It saves us energy, it's efficient, it's just the way that our brains are built to survive. So there's nothing inherently wrong with that. In fact, it's moved us as a population to survive many, many, generations of stress. However, if you move to the next line, the stress is still there, but we insert this mindfulness, this choice, this ability to enact our power and our freedom, and then our choice becomes more voluntary. Now, this, even if we're practiced, I've practiced this for years. Even when we're practiced, there will be times when those automatic, habituated patterns of thinking and being just happen. They happen for me less often, but they will still happen because I'm human, and because this mindfulness skill set, it takes a lot of practice. But I also want to tell you that even when you begin in the very early days of practicing mindfulness, you'll be probably able to notice that you're choosing your response just a little bit more frequently. Sorry, before we do this, before we go on, I just want to say that you're probably already practicing mindfulness. There's nothing mystical or, sort of magical about mindfulness. You have practiced it over and over again in your life. And the way that you know this is think back to times, hopefully even today, when you just felt like you were so in the moment, when time was just moving, it just seemed like the flow state was happening for you. That is mindfulness. The last time that you were in nature and you were just in awe of a sunset or a sunrise, mindfulness. The last time that you were really listening to someone and chose to just listen and to not interact or to not express your opinion until they asked for it. That's mindfulness. That's mindful communication. So I want you to be clear that you're already doing this in many areas of your life. This isn't an add-on. It's just an awareness, a naming of ways of being that you're probably already doing. So looking at the psychology of positive psychology, positive flourishing, I'm drawing from 3 different authors here, Marty Seligman, Barbara Fredrickson, and Shawn Achor. And they have written, interestingly, they have written from their research studies and translated it into the popular press, which I always find to be just a wonderful skill, to be able to translate research findings into words that people in the lay public can understand. So I really appreciate that. So kind of pulling all of this work together, what they found as a collective, and they don't often work together, I'm just pulling from all of their work. What they have found is that happiness actually isn't that sort of superficial icing on the cake kind of emotion that we might think. That the genuine, well-rooted happiness comes from, yes, pleasure, but also engagement and meaning. So when we're thinking about how things are for you right now in teaching in the pandemic, performing all of the other aspects of your role and your multiple roles during the pandemic, these are the things that are going to add to resilience and add to your making meaning of this time. And we're probably at various stages of understanding what this time has meant for us. Some days you may feel like you're really able to understand what's happening for you in terms of personal meaning, professional meaning. And other days it just seems like one day looks the same as the next. So don't worry about that. I mean, if you're feeling like that's happening to you, that some days are really rich and others just seem sort of mundane, that's perfectly acceptable and normal, especially in these pandemic times. So knowing that pleasure, engagement, and meaning are that is the definition of happiness. How can we lean more toward those aspects using mindfulness, using the awareness that we are at an inflection point in our history and in our time as individuals, but also as a society? How can we gravitate more toward pleasure, engagement, and meaning on purpose, right? Choosing that. Not being just drawn through the tides of what's happening around us, but actually engaging in it and shaping our future individually and collectively. So I'm going to read this list of positive emotions. This comes from Barbara Fredrickson's work. She's at University of North Carolina, and she and her students have done experiments in all of these different emotional ways of showing up, and they're fascinating. So I would really encourage you to read more of her work if this grabs your interest. So as I read these words, I just want you to let my voice land on your ear, and I want you to imagine a time when you felt that emotion. This could be a time close to this moment, or it could be a time in the past, or it could even be a time that you're looking forward to in the future. Okay, so you're going to engage your imagination as well as your sensation of my voice hitting your ear. So the first one is joy. So experiencing joy, imagining all that went into that. And with all of these, this can be a very simple thing. It doesn't have to be extravagant. The last time you experienced joy, or a time you're looking forward to experiencing joy. gratitude, sense of sincere appreciation for something or someone or a situation. Serenity, that sense of deep contentment and peace. Interest, a time when your curiosity was really fired, when you wanted to know more. Interest. Hope, a sense that things will work out, that there is a positive future. Hope. Pride, a sense of, real sense of pleasure in your accomplishments or who you are. This is pride that is not boastful. It's pride in doing a good job or showing up in a helpful way. Amusement, laughing or smiling or simply just being tickled by whatever is happening. Inspiration, finding some sense of connection to something greater than yourself, an idea, a person, a movement, maybe something in nature. Awe, that sense of just, wow, amazement. And love. So even thinking and imagining times when you felt that way, maybe you could re-experience some of those, even by just listening to the word or reading the word and using your memory and your imagination. So much of this work really encourages us to think intentionally about how can we get more of these positive emotions in our life. And often it's really by simple things. So translating those flourishing aspirational words like love and awe into practices, what are some day-to-day behaviors that we can do and that we can encourage and support others to do so that we can flourish. So the first on the list, I didn't make this up. It was really there. First on the list was meditate. And by the way, mindfulness and meditation are separate things. Meditation means really centering, focusing, being attuned into the inner workings. Mindfulness is focusing your attention on whatever is happening, whether that's the breath or playing with your dogs. So mindfulness can be practiced in lots of different ways. Meditation is done in a certain way. So meditation, finding something to look forward to. And in this pandemic, sometimes we have to just be simple. Like, I don't know, what book are you going to read next week? Or it's Tuesday, what socks are you going to wear? I'm being kind of silly here, but really thinking, what am I going to look forward to so that every day doesn't look the same? Committing conscious acts of kindness. So really going out of our way. And again, these don't have to be big, major things. They can be just simple, small acts, a thank you note to your letter carrier, your postal worker, just any little thing that you do with intention. Infuse positivity into our surroundings. So many of us are working from our homes or other places these days, and or our offices. So really having things around you that make you happy and maybe remind you of things that are positive. Or, in my little space right here, I have self-comfort things like a hand lotion and a lip gloss and my clock that was given to me as a gift. So just things that make you feel either comfortable, inspired, connected, something that's positive. And then shaking things up a little bit every once in a while, moving things around or adding new things to your space that help you to really see things afresh and anew. Activity and exercise, super important in terms of our health and well-being. And this doesn't have to be a strict routine of anything. These are just activities that you enjoy. And especially, so many of us are sitting so much these days, scheduling in times to turn off your camera and stretch. In fact, you can do it right now if you want. Just getting a little bit more mobility into our lives. Spending money on experiences and helping others. This means spending money on experiences rather than stuff. So things like, if you wanted to gift someone with an online performance, a concert performance, or gift someone with a quote of the day, anything that could be experienced rather than material. It challenges us in terms of using our imagination a bit. Activate our signature strength. So thinking about the things that you do really well and then doing them, giving yourself license to enjoy those things and really give those gifts to the world. The next one is savoring. So savoring, when we do have those moments of happiness and joy, flow, being awake to the fact that we're experiencing them so that you can really savor it. Because when you savor it, it puts it into your long-term memory and you can re-experience it again and again and again. And by the way, if you share that with someone, it just extends those flourishing thoughts and behaviors and ways of being. So if we can savor and share, that it really makes those experiences go that much longer. Journaling is fabulous, and I'm going to get to those questions here next. Spend time in nature. Nature is a really great teacher, and more evidence is showing us that being out in nature supports our health and well-being mentally as well as physically. Finally, on this list, be really simple and compassionate with yourself. There's so much happening these days, and you've already made it through so much that often we just keep moving. We forget how much we have accomplished. And with that as a note, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to ask you to bring in your journals, whatever you have to write on. And I'm going to start us with just a simple centering exercise. So this will be a mindfulness experience, and then I'll ask you to do some writing. All right. So to begin with, if you have your cameras on, you're welcome to turn them off here for a minute, because sometimes it's nice to be unobserved. So if you're seated or if you're standing, just feel the floor under your feet, feel the earth underneath you. Really get a sense of embodiment. So as academics, we often live a lot inside of our heads. So moving your awareness from your brain way into your body. So getting a sense of where your feet are, getting a sense of where your seat is, where your body is. Bringing your attention to your body. And if you'd like, you can even close your eyes a bit or soften your gaze, whatever is most comfortable to you. Maybe bringing some tallness to your spine so that you're upright and dignified as a human being. And just gently inviting your attention to land on your breath without trying to change anything. Cultivating this awareness of your breath right now. Allowing yourself to simply arrive in this moment. Been talking and listening a lot. So just settling in to who you are and how you are right now. And just get a sense with the stillness. Checking in with yourself. It's very normal that distractions will happen. Interruptions may come in. Thoughts may come in. That's perfectly fine and expected. It's not a problem to be solved. Just notice and bring your attention back to your breath or to your body. And then having just a scan through your body from your head to your toes, seeing if you can let go of any tension or holding on that might be happening there. So just notice Are there places where you're holding on, you're tightening? You just soften into those places a bit. And so now feeling centered and like you've really arrived with yourself, with a sense of friendliness and curiosity about you, a sense of gentleness and compassion, viewing yourself as you would a friend. Keeping that quality of your attention going for as long as you can. I'd like you to go ahead and reopen your eyes, get a sense of your surroundings again. And the first question, and you can write this down if you'd like, is what have I accomplished in this last year? And by accomplished, I don't only mean I know that's poor grammar, but I'm focusing not only on what you've accomplished in terms of products, classes, scholarly things. I'm thinking of also, what did you accomplish as a person? What characteristics or qualities have you strengthened in this last year? Maybe things that you didn't even set out to do. So, what did I accomplish in this last year? Just take a few minutes to write down a few of those things. And now I'll go at a pretty fast clip, so know that you can come back to these questions at any time. And I would encourage you to do that. So the first thing, of course, to do is to take stock of what you did. This is sort of a strength-based way to take stock and build on what you have achieved. Again, not only in the tangible way, but also in qualities or characteristics that you've noticed about yourself. The next question is, what were my biggest disappointments? What were my biggest disappointments this year? So often we forget to extract meaning and learning from the things that didn't go well. And again, disappointments can be both in terms of academic productivity, but also just in personal ways. You know, things that you didn't get to do or things shifted, whatever those are for you. The next question is, what did I learn? What did I learn this year? And this all of these questions really can take a lot of time and attention. So please know that I'm not trying to rush you. This is just some things that you can view as homework if you choose to, all this self-reflection. So the next question is, I think that this will be perhaps the last question that I'll pose, and that is, how do I limit myself? How do I limit myself, and how can I stop? How do I limit myself, and how can I stop? Right. So I'm going to stop the writing exercise there, and you can turn on your cameras now. I would love to see you. I found that these questions can be really helpful in terms of a strength-based way to think about where have we been and where do we want to go based on what we've learned? So often we do, move through things so quickly, and we sort of forget to take stock and to remember how much has been accomplished, especially in this year. Just making it through this pandemic is a huge, huge accomplishment. So part of what I wanted to share with you today is a brief overview of the science of mindfulness, what we know about how it works. And the source for this, and again, this is just very basic highlights. The source for this is the National Institute of Health, and NIH, and it is focused solely on the medical and health benefits. There's whole other realms of literature on things like athletic performance and business performance and leadership and all kinds of other aspects, but I did focus my search on what is in the health and well-being arena. And so the specific institute that this comes from is the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health. And so they have a whole compendium of evidence and how much that evidence is weighted in terms of the science and the rigor and the sample sizes, et cetera. So mindfulness is considered a complementary and integrative health intervention. And the next bullet is context. And that is because the way that I like to talk about mindfulness as a clinician is that you can certainly use it as a prevention. You can use it while you're ill or have a certain medical condition, and you can use it afterwards for rest and recovery and fullness of life. It doesn't take the place of healthcare. And so please use it freely, but please don't see it as a therapy all onto its own. Right now, we are seeing amazing numbers in terms of overwhelm, anxiety, depression, and mindfulness can be a very powerful tool in the toolbox of addressing those experiences. But I always say, please pull in all of your tools if you're feeling any of that. The threats to our mental well-being have never been as much as they are right now. So please raise your hand, get help. Mindfulness is a great tool, but it's not the end all and be all. Having said that, there is really good evidence that mindfulness has a positive impact on anxiety, depression, high blood pressure, irritable bowel syndrome, insomnia, and in some cases, pain. So the literature on pain is mixed. Some of the research that I did, we followed a population of people with low back pain and randomized them into two groups. One got mindfulness-based stress reduction and the other got education. And the mindfulness was very effective, but it did not reduce the pain. It did not change the source of the pain. What it did is it helped people have a different relationship with their pain. So often, think about the last time that you were sick or injured. Often we tell ourselves a narrative. It's natural that we tell ourselves this sort of story about, it'll be way long before I feel better again. I'll never be able to do X, Y, and Z again. The pain comes with a lot of baggage, I guess is what I'm saying. Mindfulness can help us to be the observer, observe our experience and decide, is that really true? Or is that just my automatic way of thinking and behaving? The next thing is that mindfulness actually changes our structure and function of our brain itself at the gross level in terms of, the anatomy of, when you see a picture of the brain and there's all those little wrinkles on the outside, the number and the depth of those wrinkles, the gyrification, tend to increase in people that have practiced mindfulness over time. The amygdala function and structure also changes, and that is that the amygdala sits at the center of the brain, and it's what I like to call the smoke detector of the brain. It really lets us know when something's wrong. It assigns emotional meaning to it and helps us to respond in whatever way. Generally, when the amygdala is triggered, that's our fight or flight response, that stress response. And we can see changes in the amygdala, again, the structure and the function, as we learn to be at choice and agency more, as we learn to integrate the environment, our stressors in a different way, and learn to engage our thinking brain, our cerebrum, a little bit more. We actually see changes in aging with mindfulness, again, at the cellular level. At the telomere level. So these are the strands at the end of your DNA. We used to think that they, with age and stress, that they disintegrated, which they do. And we used to think that it was a one-way street, that once you lost the length of your telomeres, never again would they come back. What we're finding is with mindfulness, certain dietary approaches, exercise, and social support, we can actually see positive changes in telomeres. So more to come on that. Lots of science going on in that space. All of these changes are happen in our bodies despite whether we're practicing at the moment or not. So like the changes in blood pressure, the changes in anxiety, depression, these can happen in a longer lasting way, not just when we're practicing, right? And mindfulness is generally safe. The one caution that we really take care to address is that in people who have experienced severe trauma or medium trauma, it's not often comfortable for them to practice things like closing your eyes or lying down on the ground. And so you'll notice that in the session that I just led you in, the language was very invitational. It was choice. You were at choice of how much you participated. So we use a trauma-informed framework at the ASU Center for Mindfulness. And that's really very important because we, of course, don't want to trigger anyone's past trauma. And again, I'll just say it again, that mindfulness is not a replacement or a treatment or a delay tactic. Yes? Sorry, was somebody asking a question?
My apologies.
Oh, no worries. So I do want to let you know that you have a Center for Mindfulness, Compassion, and Resilience at ASU. And so this is the website, and we have so many resources there for you. You use them freely. Because of the pandemic, we had to cancel our conference last March. And so we asked ourselves, what could we do instead of, how are we constrained? What could we put out there? And so we started doing daily YouTube sessions, and those have continued Monday through Thursday. Monday is mini mindfulness, where we have just a short practice. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are live sessions. And so you are absolutely invited to come to those sessions. They're for one and all. You can use these sessions as like learning objects for classes that you're teaching. We have guest speakers all the time from inside and outside of ASU. We finally refer to Midday Mindfulness as the show. We're being approached now by people who want to be on the show with us, and we vet them, of course, and prepare them to be on with us. I'll give you you can find the archived session on our website, but I'll also share a link with you maybe I'll just send it to Simon about all of the archive sessions that we have so that you can go through those and just see what might be appealing to you. We have addressed really serious topics like isolation, depression, imposter syndrome, loneliness, things that were, as we were early days last March and April thinking about the pandemic. But then as time went by and the calls for social justice became ever more urgent and palpable, we expanded the paradigm of what we talked about on Midday Mindfulness. And so you'll see sessions like, what does it take to be an ally? What kinds of health inequities are we facing? And also how to have a dialogue with people when we may not be informed in a right way, or how to have a dialogue about difficult topics. So we talk about really serious things, but we also bring levity and lightheartedness into it because that's important too. So you'll see some, like for Halloween, we dressed up in costume. And a couple of weeks ago, we talked about all the different roles we play in terms of hats that we wear. So we all wore hats. We partner with a petting farm outside of Chicago. So we've had guest stars that are thoroughbred horses and micro pigs and dogs. So we really try to come at mindfulness in a way that engages all of our senses and the lighthearted times as well as the serious times. So I'll wrap up in just a minute with some practices that we can do together, but I want to just come back to this idea of having a toolbox. So mindfulness is a skill set that you can practice in so many different ways. And one of the most important these days is compassion and, understanding that we never know what someone else is going through. And I think as we're doing more and more meetings on Zoom and more classes remotely, and even in person, we can never tell what's going on underneath. When I was doing research beginning days at Mayo, we recruited a group, the leadership group was our sample. And as part of the study, we had to assure the IRB, the Institutional Review Board, that we would, if people scored a certain level of depression or anxiety, we would refer them on for care before they participated in the study. This was in 2006, I think it was. So a long time ago, before any pandemic or any of the more recent things that we've been through. But even at that time, fully a third of these people that came to work with a smile on their face, a can-do attitude, we'll get it done, really strong, a third of them identified as having depression or suffering to the extent that we needed to refer them on before they could participate. And I remember sitting in my office and going through that data and just understanding that, of course I was there to study mindfulness, but the real finding happened before we ever started the study. And that was, you never know what someone's going through. And so even though they show up in a really strong, confident manner, it doesn't mean that that's what's happening underneath. And so to me, it became a very strong conviction that teaching compassion and living with compassion is really so very important. It really can't be overstated. So, coming back to more general mindfulness, we can infuse mindfulness into our day, even things like walking and driving, getting from one place to another. Really understanding that when we're under stress is a great time to practice. So taking some deeper breaths, modeling that mindfulness that it is possible to be peaceful and productive, that we don't have to go at a breakneck speed all the time, that we can be, that we are enough just by the fact that we're human beings. So I wanted to leave you with 4 practices that you can do anytime, any place. So I'll describe these and then we can try one of them. So, and I also bring these up because these are really good practices to use with kids and teenagers and pretty much anybody in your life. These can be practiced by anyone. So the first one is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it's a way to engage all of your senses, to refocus your attention. And this can be really helpful, especially in times when you're just feeling taken away by your thoughts, where you just feel like you're no longer in control of what's going on in your brain, or in times of heightened anxiety. So let's try it right now. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is don't change anything about the way that you're sitting. Don't close your eyes. Just be right where you are. and look around and see 5 things as best that you can. See 5 things and take in everything that you can with your sight. All right, and if we had a lot more time, we would spend a lot more time doing this, but we'll move on pretty quickly. So the next thing is 4. So take in 4 things that you can touch and feel. So right now in your environment, just pick up or feel the clothes on your body, pick up objects with your hands, feel 4 things. So you've seen 5 things, you're feeling 4 things. And really bring yourself into the experience of touching. So the next number is 3. So tune into what you can hear. Can you hear 3 things? You hear my voice. Can you hear anything else in your environment? Things way in the distance or really close up. So 2 things that you can smell. This can be the lack of smell, or it could be the smell of your hair or the smell of your sleeve. Anything that you can smell, aroma. And then the last thing is taste. So tasting inside your mouth. What do you taste when you just focus on what is in your mouth right now? So that's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's really fun to play with kids, teenagers, and you can assign different things to the numbers. Like if you were sitting down to eat a nice dinner, you could do 5 is the things that you're tasting, and you can just assign different numbers to the different senses. Okay, so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, getting your attention into your body. The next one is stay where your feet are. So I know that this sounds really simple, but when you're dealing with someone who's having really acute anxiety, just getting them to be where their feet are, or if you're experiencing the sense of overwhelm and just like you're being carried off by that sense of not being in control, get where your feet are. And this again is a powerful reminder that we are embodied. I used to use this in times when I used to have nursing students in clinical, and they would be scared and nervous, and with good reason. So often I would tell them, take a deep breath and get where your feet are. Just be where you are. Don't worry about being anywhere else right now. And it's amazing, as simple as it sounds, how getting into our body can help us navigate that anxiety. The next and last one is square breathing. You might have heard it called box breathing. It's used a lot in training elementary school kids, police officers. It's used in the military. Find it very useful with older adults, people with insomnia. Generally, if you're human, you might find this helpful. So the idea is you can do it with me. Just inhale for the beat of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause at the top. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Pause at the bottom. 2, 3, 4. And then just going at your pace, complete a breath of in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, pause for 4. So the next time, I don't know about you, but the next time you can't sleep, I find this to be a really helpful remedy for that. Or the next time that you're feeling just a sense of, I need to get focused before I start on this project. I think that you'll find it helpful for that as well. So with that, I just again want to end with a thank you so much for your kind attention. I hope that these tools have been helpful to you, and that you understand it is an open invitation. This is maybe the first time we're talking, but I hope it won't be the last. You're welcome to email me personally at terrypipe@asu.edu. Happy to have more dialogue about this. This is just the first sort of run through of many ideas. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I see that we have some questions in the chat, so I would love to see what those are.
Carrie, I just want to extend my gratitude to you for sharing this information and this wonderful practice and presentation with us. I think it was really fascinating to learn just a little bit about the science of mindfulness. I think that's something that a lot of us are not familiar with. You know, like you said, mindfulness is kind of having a moment right now, right? On slogans on coffee mugs and T-shirts and all kinds of different things. But to see the effects of actually engaging with mindfulness is really great. Some of those exercises I found really helped me just in that moment, grounding my feet and just kind of scanning my entire body, the box breathing. These are such simple, practical tools, but have a lot of impact. So thank you for bringing those back.
You're more than welcome. Thank you again for the invitation. I really appreciate it. So, and again, thank you all for your work. It's really so very important. You're making dreams come true. Not to add any pressure.
There is a question in the chat. Can you recommend a source to read related to the effects of aging?
Sure. So there's, I'm looking for it on my shelf right now. There's a book called the telomere. I think it's called the telomere effect. So it's, let me get it and I'll show it to you. I don't know that you can see it because of the lighting, but it's by Elizabeth Epple and Alyssa Epple and Elizabeth Blackburn. And they were the first ones to really isolate the fact that telomeres could be reversed. I mean, the length of telomeres could be stopped and reversed. And they studied, their first study was to look at mothers of young children who were either chronically ill or healthy, and looking at the interaction between the perception of stress and telomeres. And it turned out that the condition of the children had much less to do with the telomere shortening than did the perception of stress, which was just a landmark study and helping us understand that this perception, this between stimulus and response, that perception is so powerful. Well, thank you so much again for your kind attention. And just know that mindfulness is alive and well here at ASU, and we would love to hear your stories about how you're using it in the classroom, or if you want more guidance on how to use it in your classes or in your research.
Thanks so much.
Yes, thank you. So I'm going to stop the recording now, and we will probably post it and publish it on the Senate website by tomorrow afternoon. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it.